Why are the Ten Commandments important? Over and above just commands that God gives us in which we exercise obedience to God, we see in other places throughout the Scriptures the importance of the commandments with regard to the very creation of God itself. The Psalms and the Proverbs speak a great deal of the law of the Lord. But how does that fit in to the overall dynamic of God's creation? Well, as we see in Psalm 19, which has a very famous opening, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows forth his handiwork. It expresses God's glory in creation, but also very strongly implies the laws that God has put into creation, that creation follows perfectly. Now, we, of course, are aware that God has put his laws into creation because we know that those laws are discoverable, learnable, and teachable. In the Christian history and Christian tradition, it's what led to modern science. We understand God as creator by studying God's creation. But not only that, Psalm 19 goes on in its second half to speak of the glory of God's law. The law of the Lord is perfect, refreshing the soul. The decrees of the Lord are right, and all of them just. And it concludes by admonishing the person reading or proclaiming the psalm to be faithful to the law of God. And why are those two combined in that one psalm? Well, it's part of the spiritual disposition of the Old Testament that the law of God complements his creation. He's worked his laws into creation, and creation follows those laws. But then God has created us in his image and likeness. In the story of the six-day creation, we are created last, not because we are the least, but because, as the saying goes, he saved the best for last. We are the pinnacle of his creation, being made in God's image and likeness. And as such, we have a law that we must follow as made in God's image. And so in many ways, God's Torah, accentuated and summarized in the Ten Commandments, is the law that is the capstone to God's law of creation. And just as creation follows God's law, we too are called to follow the law of God in the Torah, summarized in the Ten Commandments. What does that imply? When we disobey God's law, we are in fact doing damage to God's creation. But when we, in fidelity to God, obey the law that he has given us, we in fact complement and build up God's creation in our obedience to the God who created us and who made humanity in his image and likeness. In addition to being a complement on God's creation, Jesus has revealed to us that living the commandments he has given us, we are in fact living a life of love and fulfilling his basic commandment to love one another. More than once, especially in the tradition and the Gospel of John, Jesus commands us to live on in my love. But then he goes on to say, you live in my love if you do what I command you. He says that there is no greater love than to lay down your life for your friends. Then he goes on, you are my friends if you do what I command you. And even a third time he says, if you live in my love, you will keep my commandments, and I will send you another advocate who will be with you always. And if you keep my commandments, you live in my love, and my Father will love you. So Jesus links the call he gives all of us to love directly to fulfillment of the commandments. But it doesn't end there. In the epistle of John, he states, the way we may be sure that we know Christ is to keep his commandments. Whoever says, I know him, but does not keep his commandments, is a liar, and the truth is not in him. But whoever keeps his word, the love of God is truly perfected in him. And so therein lies the true importance of the 10 Commandments. When we fulfill the law of God, we are actually complementing God's very creation. And when we obey his commandments, we are in fact fulfilling Christ's basic command to love.